Welcome to the Evolution of Mom. We are your hosts, Amy and Charisse, and we hope you enjoyed our last episode with Dawn from Simply Corfit about sneezing and peeing. So this episode is with Brigitta Beer, who is a holistic food nutritionist, and I'm super excited to have her here today. And we're going to talk about why we shouldn't make the table a war zone and why the first ingredient is always love. So welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Super excited. First podcast ever. But I figure it's just talking, right? I can talk. I talk all the time. So
right. We talked for a whole bunch before we came on here. Now we just stuck a mic in your face.
Yeah. Now we're just going to do it officially and see if I can come up with the same stuff I talked to you about. So.
Well, and that's the best part. It's just a casual conversation. And by the way, if we all look differently, it's because we're not at our Evolution of Mom studio. We're actually in my house enjoying a birthday weekend with
on location.
On location. So. Yeah, so do you want to tell us a little bit about your story and what got you passionate about what it is you do?
Yeah, long story. I'll try and make it short. Just come from, first of all, grew up in a household where we were all foodies. My dad was a baker and a cake decorator and a chocolatier, trained in Switzerland, and my mom was a homemaker, so always good food on the table. So definitely grew up in a household where food was celebration, good nutrition and celebration. So definitely a foodie. But then when I got into my mid-teens, I started having just an unhealthy relationship with food and started with some restriction, almost as a game with my body. Let's just see if I can not have food for X amount of days. And what I thought was a game turned into like a full-blown eating disorder in my mid-teens. So then that would, go through waves through my teens and into my 20s where I've, better seasons and worse seasons of it. But definitely a very unhealthy relationship with food long-term over about 20, 25 years. And even when I was well, it really had just transitioned over to disordered thinking around food, unhealthy relationship with food, right? But that was normal because everybody dieted and that was typical for women. So I read all the diet books and all the Shape magazines and all of that. This is way before the internet, obviously, at least part of it, right? So I had to actually go out and get the magazines and not just have it in my face online, which it is now. So just an unhealthy relationship with food and food obsession really kind of took over my life from I was 50 until probably mid-30s, close to 40-ish. So it was one of those things that I just thought would be my lot in life. I just had to live with this forever. And the whole time that I was dealing with it and struggling with it, I was kind of seen as the health guru. I was a nutritionist in our circle because I read every single book, every single magazine article. And so I knew everything up here about good nutrition, not just dieting, but even good nutrition, but I couldn't apply it to my life. So there was an obsession around learning about it, but also the restriction and the obsession around food just lingered. And it wasn't until I had run into different people and by now online, that just made me realize that this didn't have to be this way always. So then really my passion for food, which I always had, but in an unhealthy way, led me to become a holistic nutritionist. And I think through that training, I already felt like I was pretty good and had a decent relationship with food, but that was kind of like the final clincher where I was finally free because I finally learned what it was to truly nourish my body at a cellular level. And that kind of took care of the cravings and the restriction and the things like that kind of on its own. Once I started actually nourishing my body, it took care of the rest and healed my gut, healed my brain, kind of all at the same time. And suddenly those patterns that had been around for 20, 25 years just kind of lifted and eased without effort, without therapy and so on, whereas I had tried everything before. So that's what brought me here. Studied the holistic nutrition, got my certification, and then went on to many, many more courses after, and now finally feel like there's food freedom and I'm no longer at war with myself all the time. So that brought me to this point. So
wow, that is so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And I love now that that's what you help other people with. I love that so much. I think that's so powerful.
Yeah, it's something too, like I think most of us don't realize that we struggle with, but I think as women especially, we've seen our moms and our grandmothers and stuff go through these like dieting phases, kind of hate and shame their body. And so I didn't even recognize like how disordered and stuff my eating was until we went through like this natural food program that exposed like our emotionality around food. Yeah. Right? And how much we use it as like a numbing tool and how much we like hide from things. And so that is one thing that I have noticed is like I would say most women have gone through some sort of disordered eating, right? And are trying to like cope with it because it's like diet, binge, diet, binge. Like there's that.
And
cycle,
I think
right?
that's our normal then, right? Like even for me, when I got healthy and I didn't have an eating disorder, I had just transitioned into our culture of dieting. So it was still very unhealthy and disordered in thinking, but that was no normal. So I thought, oh, good, I'm good, right? And I had an answer for everything, and I knew everything inside out about nutrition, but I could not. It had just now transitioned into our diet culture.
Yeah, it was something that I saw a lot at the gym, right? Like it was people that went from disordered eating to more of like an obsessive compulsion around like their macros and all that kind of stuff. Like it was just this constant like how to tweak their body because they were always kind of searching for that happiness and that love in themselves.
And if someone was going to come through diet, which it never ever does, right? But if we look a certain way, then this will happen. Or I always thought I would find happiness at a certain size, right? And interesting, I was never overweight, so it was never an issue in that way. It was just this struggle around food or fear of what it would do. I have no idea. It was just this feeling of food inside me felt terrible, right? So then that restriction starts. And like I said, it started a bit as a game, as a control thing at 15, and that then morphed into big time, just mess with my brain. Speaking of bread, that's how it started. My dad's a baker, so he had fresh bread always on the counter, right? And so that's where it started. Was I wasn't going to have that slice of bread, and then funny, that's where it started. Now I bake bread all the time, and I love bread.
And it's funny because we go through that. Like, how often do we go into like a coffee shop and we see that cookie and we really want it, and we like refuse ourselves that pleasure and that joy in it, and then it gets to that point that when we finally do have it, we just like have everything, right? And it's like that uncontrollable before we have to get that shame to go back into it. So I'm learning more to lean into that. Like, I just want this because I don't have to restrict it. Like, I don't have to say no. There's nobody going to slap me on the wrist.
That's right.
Right?
And we can enjoy it. We can enjoy the fun food as well. It's part of healthy living and part of food for the soul, right? Food is community, food for enjoyment, I think is just as important as food for nourishment. And then the more we can just enjoy it, there's no restrictions. The abundance mindset, right? You can have it any time. So if you never have to restrict it because it's always available, then you don't need to feel ashamed or restrict and then binge because your body's been restricted for so long.
And you're empowered to make that conscious choice, right? That's a
Which
big
is
thing
huge.
is coming down to empowerment with your food choices so that you can have the cookie. You don't have to restrict yourself and binge later and then not even enjoy it and then guilt and shame yourself afterwards. That's not enjoyable, right? And we all do that. And so making those conscious choices of I am going to have this cookie, I'm going to enjoy it, and I'm going to sit with my decision and embrace that decision so I don't feel guilty about it later. Right? And then it's just this whole experience, and you're going to take from it, like you say, what you need to get from it, but it also fills your soul. I mean, you're boosting those certain happy hormones, like so many of your happy hormones are produced in your gut. So that's why it's really important when you are healing your brain, you're also healing your gut because they're going to heal each other, right?
Has to go hand in hand.
Beautiful that you got to experience that. I mean, I don't know a woman alive who hasn't been exposed to or a part of diet culture, right? In some sort of
Sadly,
way. And it's coming from the wrong headspace because when we're looking at food or looking at exercise and nutrition or diet culture, we're coming at it from negativity. I'm doing this because I hate my body.
Right. Totally.
I'm doing this because I want to change. I'm doing this because I won't be happy until I'm this size, which everyone has seen that we don't. Our mindset doesn't change. You get to that size and you're still unhappy because you haven't fed your soul, you haven't changed your mindset, you haven't worked on that as well. But coming from a negative space with all of that, it doesn't bring lasting change, and it doesn't bring that positive change too. So I love how you talk about nourishment. And when you love your body and you're doing it from a sense of nourishment and love, because this is your being, this is your only body that you get, and it shows up for you every day. We've talked about that. And when you're coming at it from that mindset, it makes a huge difference on how you accept the cookie and how you accept a salad, right? It's very, very
It's like
powerful.
enjoying that cookie wholeheartedly is going to give you way more nourishment on a cellular and soul level than going through that boring kale salad that you're hating every moment of because you have to eat this diet food. Nothing against the kale salad, nothing against the cookie. It's the attitude behind it and how so if we're in fight or flight mode and in resentment and hatred for ourselves, we can't even absorb the nutrients properly that are in that good food, salad, whatever it is we're choosing, or we can't even absorb what we can from that amazing cookie, right? Your body will do much more eating the cookie in enjoyment and peace than it will eating the kale salad with hatred, right?
And we're not going to release.
Right.
If when we're holding on to those hatred feelings and that scarcity mindset around the food that you're not eating right now, your body's actually going to choose to hold on to the stuff you're trying to get rid of anyways. Right? So having that mindset shift around it is not only good for you mentally, but it actually makes a physical difference.
Exactly. And that's why I talk about, like, the first ingredient is love. If we're going in to the meal, snack, whatever it is, with love for ourselves. So our very first active nourishment of natural nourishment from birth is being breastfed, and that releases oxytocin in both the mom's body and in the baby's body. So if our very first active nourishment releases oxytocin, love hormone, happy hormone, right, builds connection and peace, then we still have that when we eat in good company, whether it's with others, we have that release of oxytocin. But even for eating with us being the good company, even for eating by ourselves, but we're enjoying our company and not hating ourselves, there's still that release of oxytocin, which is a love hormone. So if we come into it with that love being the first ingredient, then we'll, first of all, be connected with ourselves more. We'll be connected with those around us more. It's a happy hormone, right? So we have that endorphin as well. And then, yeah, we just come into it with peace. We can absorb the nutrients. We can enjoy the food. And it just gets out of that cycle of hatred and disappointment and shame and regret, which then just sends us into another cycle often of restriction or diet mindset. And that just perpetuates. It's a vicious, vicious cycle. Anybody that's in it, most women, know it's a vicious cycle. And we have to break that pattern and just create a different mindset around the food. Make peace with food, make peace with ourselves.
Yeah. It's so nice, and it's freeing almost once you let go of those restrictions and that scarcity mindset to just like live in that abundance and to allow yourself to be like, yeah, we can have it anytime. We can, like, food does bring joy. Like, there's a social aspect to it. There's an emotional aspect to it, right?
And it should.
Yeah, it should.
Food should be emotional,
right?
To some degree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it can remind us, like, just as smells remind us of a memory from our childhood or whatever. And I know we talked about this before we jumped on, but that a lot of our food rules that we don't even realize actually come from childhood and around the table, from what we were modeled, what we were told, those kind of things, which is that food is a war zone. So you can
and that's kind of where I feel like the table being a war zone, whether it's with ourselves at the table, in our own attitude towards food, our own attitude towards ourselves, or with our kids, right? That I don't know, I never would say that what I dealt with was because my parents did something, but we did grow up in that more old school thinking, and you eat everything that's served, you take a bit of everything, you don't waste any food, so even if you're full and you've taken too much, you have to eat it, right? And so there's so many nuances within this, because there isn't a right or wrong so much as what did we create. So, and for me, and everybody has a liver story, right? So mine was a liver story where we had to have liver at least once a month, whatever it was, and I could not physically get liver down. So I'd sit there and gag, but I would be sitting at the table for hours until my liver was finished, and it was not respected that I could not eat liver. And it had gotten to one scenario where it got really ugly around it. Then years later, how many years later, 20 years later, with one of my daughters, and she doesn't like tomatoes, and she's not eating the tomato. Just eat the tomato. I don't like tomatoes. Just eat the tomato. So she finally is forced to eat it, and then she does gag and spit up at the table. And that's where it was this, like, threw me right back to being 9 years old, sitting outside at a picnic table over this plate of liver on holidays that I could not come inside until it was gone. Right? And then when I could not get it down, I was then restricted from any kind of treats for the rest of the holiday until I ate liver properly again, until I didn't do it with a fuss. So when my daughter then had this little, gag with the tomato, I'm like, oh my gosh, I am totally perpetuating the same patterns, right? Or the staying at the table till your plate is finished. I'm all for not wasting food, and I understand that's a reason behind parents doing that. But to me, it's just as wasteful to cram something down your throat when you're totally full and we're not respecting the fullness, right? It's just as wasteful to do that as it is to throw it in the compost and then learn from it, not take as much next time, right? Or whether it's, eating things you don't like, we have different taste buds. And I agree, people say, well, then we create picky eaters. Children will not starve themselves. I don't believe in making separate meals for every person at the table. We create, our meals, and we give good nourishing foods to our, to our families. But if they have different tastes within that, then okay, then maybe don't have it. Keep offering it. Keep trying new things, but not forcing it down their throat, right? It's just respecting those tastes. And kids aren't going to starve themselves. Eventually, they're going to eat something, and the taste buds will develop.
And
in my mind, at least,
they will, like, that's, I found my kids went through this phase where they ate almost anything when they were like little babies, and then the older they got, when they got more of like an autonomy, they got really picky. And I was always kind of like, well, I'm not going to make anything else, and this is what we're having. But if they chose not to eat it, they wouldn't eat it. And I think so many moms, we're questioning whether we're doing it wrong, or we're worrying about them starving or whatever. And so then we end up like, okay, just giving in and giving them snacks, or right. And but yeah, like you said, like, kids won't starve themselves, and sometimes if they go to bed without dinner, like, that's their choice, and they always know that's their choice. And it's so funny because now, my oldest being 9, he's starting to like venture out and try new things, and he's like, oh well, I kind of like this, or he'll give it another shot, right? And so I've never forced them to eat anything, and now they're like kind of always he's venturing back out into like,
and it does come full circle
variety,
eventually,
right?
yeah. And they've developed their own taste within that. Yeah. And I so related to what you said with, we're so concerned about getting, the good nutrients and the calories and whatever, that we'll do anything to make them eat, or to have them eat, even if it's just a snack later. And I totally fell for that, where, if you're out and about and the second they said we're hungry, I would get them some food. Like, they never had to experience 2 hours of hunger, right, to get till we got home, because I kept thinking, oh my gosh, they're hungry, we have to feed them, which I don't know where that came from, but yeah, for sure. And then later on realizing you're not going to starve, and if you don't like it, don't eat it, but I'm not making something else. And there's no other snacks. There's not going to be different treats and dessert just because you didn't eat your dinner and you're hungry now. It would just be, well, there's still supper if you want some, right? But just not the forcing. So not catering, but not forcing, and letting them have their individual taste within that. My middle went through a season of white foods. Like, she would only eat white rice or white pasta with butter or whatever, no protein, no veggies. I'm like,
as a nutritionist, you're probably like, oh my God.
Yeah, and it was before it was nutrition, but still I knew all the things, right? I knew all the nutrients and all the calories and all the macros, because that was my obsession. So I was like, it was killing me inside. And she's fine. She's brilliant. She's fine. She's like lifting weights like crazy now. Like, she's super healthy and eats really balanced. But that white food phase, it was distressing for me, because, oh my gosh, she's, gonna not thrive. And of course, when you go for Chinese buffet once in a blue moon, and you order, or you go and pay $12.95, whatever it is, for her to have her meal, and she only picks white rice, it's like cringing. It's like, we paid $12.95 for white rice. Side note. But yeah, so yeah, they'll come around, and all my kids, I've got 3 girls, almost 18, 19, and 20 now, and they're super healthy, and they all have still different taste buds, but they're fine. And I just tried to make less battle at the table. I didn't do it perfectly, far from, but as I learned, I changed. And as I had those aha moments of, oh my gosh, I'm just perpetuating the same cycles, then I changed it. So like we said earlier, do what you can, and when you know better, do better. So it's never going to be perfect. We just do our best.
Do our best. And that's, it's just it's always like a learning experience, right?
Yeah. Oh, it is.
Always. Like,
parents are learning along with kids, right? When your kids are first teenagers, you've never had teenagers before. You're growing with them.
We're winging it.
Right? I tell my kids that a lot, actually. I tell them, you know what, it's okay to say sorry when we make mistakes and admit when we make mistakes, because mommy makes mistakes too, because I'm also learning.
Totally. All
right?
the time.
And we actually make a big habit of celebrating when they try something new for food, even if they don't like it. If they decide they don't like it, that's a big one for us. Try it. You never know. Like, your taste buds change all the time. You've never tried this. How do you know if you don't like it? And then respecting when they don't. Yeah. And just really celebrating them for trying, because then they're going to do it again. And some of the things my kids have done, it's so fun. And some of the things my kids have tried is actually really adventurous. My oldest is more adventurous. He's the one who ends up liking it and enjoying it. And my youngest is definitely like that white food phase. Yeah, white for food. Sure. And it's just when he discovered rice, he wasn't going to try it because it looked weird. Yeah. But then plain rice. Now I put a little pink salt on it for him.
That makes it like minerals. Here you go. Trace minerals for sure. And they're not going to starve over a couple months of white rice. Honestly, right? We have so much food at our disposal all the time, and I think that's part of it. We have that. We have it all there available. How could you not want it, or how could you not make them want it? Because this is good. We have it.
Yeah.
Right.
One thing you said that really stuck out to me too is just embracing their individual food journeys, right? Because I think we all get stuck in the idea of, hey, this diet worked for these hundreds of women, allegedly.
Right.
It's going to work for me too. But, diet, one, we're using it wrong. The word diet with the diet culture and stuff, like my diet is a human diet.
Yeah.
You don't ask an elephant what diets it's on. It eats elephant food. That's the elephant's diet.
Right.
This is the tiger's diet. We have a human diet, and it's individual to everybody, right? Like,
And changing all the time. Even
that's right. That's right. As your hormones change, as like me, I've noticed I need a lot more like squash and yam than maybe I thought in my regular diet, because it just supports my hormones and makes me feel way better than if I don't have that. But that's individual to me, and it might not be the same for you. So when everyone jumps on this one diet and you don't know if that's aligned with your body, aligned with what kind of inflammation you have going on. So it's just one of those things, and we say it all the time, you have to explore it. You have to explore what works for you, what doesn't. You have to accept that you're an individual. You have to keep pushing through any growth, right? Because we always come against these walls. Well, this isn't working. This isn't working. You have to keep going and just making those small, consistent changes to find what works for you. And then asking for help. There are so many people out there like yourself who can help us find what those individual foods are. I actually had my
Just
blood
as a guide,
assessed this
right?
morning.
Yeah.
Right? I had my appointment with you this morning where we assessed my blood, and it was so amazing to see. That's been my goal for my health, is to keep breaking down what serves my body and what doesn't. And this was just that next layer, and I'm so excited to keep going with that. But there are people like you, people who are dedicated to help find what works for you when it comes to food and nutrition.
And even just other people's experiences, right? Like there is no one size fits all with anything, and especially with food. And like you said, the diet, that word has been hijacked by the diet industry. So your diet is just the food you consume. That the elephant consumes, that we consume, that anything, right? And so everybody has to be their own diet detective and figure out what works for them, and by experimenting, by trying. So I don't prescribe specific diets for anyone. I will go with, hey, here, this way of eating is usually beneficial overall. All my recommendations are based on a whole foods diet as much as possible, especially for healing purposes, right? But within that, high carb, low carb, it's not, more yams for you, more squash than maybe for you or for me, whatever, right? We all have our individual physiology, our individual tastes, and there is no one size fits all. And if we're trying to do a cookie cutter plan or from a diet book, whatever, we are going to fail because it's not necessarily made for you, right? Or for me. So I think that is a huge problem that, again, within this diet industry, that we as women are largely targeted by it, not playing a victim to it, just saying this is what it is. But if you do this, then this will happen. Well, that's not true for anything, right? That's also not true for how do we end the war at the table. We have to figure out for us how we're going to do that. But here are some points, right? Going in with respect for yourself, respect for your body. Going in for respect for your kids, whoever's at your table, individuality as well, and even their own physical individuality, not just taste buds, but certain foods might not agree with them at that point with whatever they're dealing with. That's why they're resistant. So you have to look at that, I think, too, not just eat it, it's healthy. Well, maybe it's not for what they've got going on, and maybe their body knows better, and so that is their intuitive eating as a child. That I think we're made to be intuitive eaters. Naturally, we're made to be intuitive eaters. That gets lost when we start eating the chemical-laden foods and so on that mess with our physiology, and we can no longer tap into that and or the mindset around it, good, bad, whatever, how we want to label our foods. Which is huge too, I think, with kids. Like you said earlier, your son doesn't like the protein right now. He's kind of off of it. Well, eat this much. So you're encouraging him to try it. But I think too, keeping it away from, this is good for you, so eat it. What's it doing for your body? Protein's going to build your Lego block for every cell in your body, right? It's going to build your muscles. It's going to build your hormones. It's going to, maybe hormones not because he's too young to understand, but whatever, right? Like if we can educate, for me, education is empowerment. So if we can educate why, with our kids even, why we're doing this, why we're having this and not that, then that is like, oh, it's knowledge, right? Knowledge is power. And for ourselves as well, the more we know, the more we know. But sometimes it convolutes it, and sometimes it's really empowering. And I choose for it to be empowering as much as possible.
Yeah, I mean, I have one kid that says he's a meatitarian and the other one that says he's a vegetarian.
Yeah.
And it's funny because after, like, I've read the Eat for Your Blood Type, and I'm like, I wonder if one is an A blood type and one is an O blood type, because O is generally more meat driven and the other, like, A is generally more plant driven. And I'm like, they're both intuitively eating what they want, right? And so I don't make one or the other. I just encourage them to keep trying it. Right. So, and I try different ways to make it. Like, I made like a at home healthy chicken fingers.
Yeah.
And so the one that doesn't eat meat, like, gobbled it up just fine.
I loved it. So that
right?
worked for him.
Yeah.
Totally. And just trying different things. And trying different things for ourselves as well, right? Variety. Keep it interesting. Keep it fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
And just remembering that long-lasting change comes from the mindset.
Totally.
Comes from your relationship, comes from shifting into a place of nourishment and love.
Totally.
Rather than that scarcity, that hatred, that self-loathing that we all have gotten into at some point or other.
Yeah, it's these patterns.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. It totally has to come from a mindset shift. And then for me, ultimately, once I finally nourished my body and finally nourished my brain, which was starving for 20 years, then the rest kind of fell into place, right? So you can't hate your body into healing, right? You have to love your body first, and then it can heal.
And then hopefully starting to normalize this type of conversation over normalizing your diet conversation.
Right.
Right? Like, I'm on this diet right now. Oh, good for you. Yeah. You look great. Oh my gosh, you've lost 10 pounds in 5 days. That's amazing. And it's like, we can shift it maybe into a healthier dialogue, because I know a lot of us feel that way inside. That's what we're looking for, instead of that negative diet culture talk that we surface layer is very positive. Right? Like, oh, good for you, you're restricting yourself. Like,
there's almost like there's celebration and suffering, or celebration in the hard stuff.
Celebration and suffering.
Whether it's our busyness, oh my gosh, I'm so busy. Oh, it's
me too, good for you. Like, that sounds amazing.
We're not allowing ourselves. And again, you're right. The first thing people will say if somebody has lost weight, that's the first thing you notice. And it's not, again, right or wrong. It's the outward thing we're noticing, right? But not while you're looking healthier, or your skin is glowing, or you seem to have more energy, right? We're right away seeing the visual, which is the most obvious, maybe, which is then some of that motivation for the diet. But you're right, shifting that thinking from, first of all, diet mentality and following that next big trend, that is going to fail, because that's the job of the diet industry. And that being said, I totally put people on protocols at times for healing purposes, right? I'm not opposed to a ketogenic diet or a paleo diet or whatever. I take the reasoning behind it, though. So for me, again, paramount is, why are we doing this? What's it doing to your body by following this? And why are we doing it for how long? Not just do this, not to lose weight. Weight loss is never, ever something I mention. It's not my goal. I do not provide weight loss coaching. I feel like weight is a symptom of something else, some other imbalance going on. And once we can actually nourish our bodies or our brains or our minds or our mindset, our attitudes, once we can heal that, then the rest will fall into place. And so weight loss is never on the table for me. And talking diet is never on the table for me. I think that that's what we need to break.
I feel weight loss is a natural symptom of health.
Totally. And your natural balance. And what is the right weight?
Exactly. Because we're all individuals.
Right? So for me, ever being a size 4, that just ain't ever going to happen, right? I might have hit that when I was 12. I don't know. So those sizes and those things that we see as ideal, what is ideal? Ideal is having great energy, being healthy, having great, blood markers and so on. That's health at any size. We also have the other of, embracing overweightness as for body positivity, which I totally agree with. But if someone's not healthy, I still want to encourage them to get healthy. Yeah. It's not about the weight. It's about the health. And if they lose weight through that because their body naturally has stuff to release, then that's awesome. But to be a certain size or a certain weight, fit that box, no, it's just damaging, really damaging. We have to celebrate our bodies.
We do. Well, I'm sure we could keep talking forever, because this is like amazing. But we had so many good nuggets. So is there one thing that you would like our listeners to take away from, like, what's one action step that they can do in their homes that would, like, instantly help them right now?
Themselves personally, or their families, or both?
May is for moms, so themselves.
Yeah, May is for moms.
Yeah.
I think mostly it's going to be a mindset tip, like just celebrating your body and celebrating your beauty and wanting to nurture that so that you are eating from a place of love, eating from a place of respect. Like, you love your kids, you want to feed them good food. Let's put that on ourselves, because I think we're so busy taking care of others all the time. We want to do everything for everybody else, your neighbor, your dog, your cat, whatever, that I think just putting that on yourself and seeing yourself just as valuable as everybody else that you're serving. We're servants, right? That's in a good way, right? Yes. We love to serve people. This is what we do. But I think if you could serve yourself this month a little bit and see your body as that temple and wanting to love it and nurture it. So really a mindset tip more than anything. Put yourself first, which sounds so cliche, but
that's our closing line.
It is.
Put yourself first.
And coming to the mindset of, like, when you are doing these changes for yourself, it does trickle down into the areas you influence anyways. All these people that you're serving, right? Because we are such servants. What you do for yourself does trickle out and influence those in a positive way. So you're still serving by serving yourself.
Totally. Yeah, because you can't serve from an empty vessel, right?
That's right.
That's my ending line.
She's closing our podcast.
You're stealing my ending line.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I didn't know.
Thank you so much for being here. Can you let our listeners know where to find you?
Yeah, thanks for having me. First of all, it's been such a joy getting to know you guys over the last couple of months and seeing you today. I'm based in Kelowna. I have my practice is downtown Kelowna. The name of it is Food Effects Nutrition, basically because the effect of food really affects everything. Let's use effect and effect, right? So Food Effects Nutrition, downtown Kelowna, and Instagram, Facebook, same handles. And that's kind of the only social I have. I'm old school.
Oh, that's perfect.
So holistic nutritionist and blood analysis and things like that. So really about customizing nutrition for people and helping them feel their best. So if you're feeling like crap and can't figure out why, I kind of want to get to the root cause of what's going on and help people figure that out. Yeah. So no simple answers, no black and white. Just everybody's need to do their own diet detective work.
So awesome. Thank you again. Thank you everybody who joined us. If you found value in this episode, please share. And as always, don't forget to put yourself first. You can't pour from an empty cup.
That's right. Self-care is selfless. I think we got that really to the core today. I love when our episodes all come to that, because it's the soul of all that we want to do and share and be. So thank you so much. As always, thank you to Next Level University. We love you guys. We couldn't do this podcast without you. For us, you can find us at the Evolution of Mom podcast on Instagram. We have a Facebook community as well where we get more intimate. We get to know you a little bit better. We're creating Zoom calls once a month where we get to share and be in a safe space together as women and talk about whatever it is. Last week was sneezing when you pee. This week is nutrition. We can dive into that as individuals on this call and support each other. Whatever it is that you need, we are here for you. We would love to have a DM from you to get you into that group, whatever it is. We are here for you. Thank you so much for being here. We'll see you next time.
Bye. Bye.